everyone, this is Tomo, and I'm going to tell you about the elderly ministry that we've been doing. So going back a little bit, our church plant has started out of the Christian disaster relief ministry that's been continuing in our town since 2011 tsunami and earthquake. Our town, Miyako, is on the Iwate coast, and it was hit pretty heavily from that earthquake. And Morioka Church, which is the mother church of our church plant, has been involved with sending volunteer workers and permanent staff to do relief work ever since 2011. And when we got involved about 5 years ago, we took over some of the locations where they'd been hosting events at. And right now we do monthly events at 2 locations in town. And in the first few years after the tsunami, those events would typically consist of some crafts and some music sometimes. But most importantly, it was about listening to the survivors' experiences and giving them the opportunity to have someone to talk to about what they'd been through, at the disaster and in the aftermath of it. But when we got involved, it had already been about 8 years or so since the disaster, and we felt like the primary needs was shifting from that kind of grief care type ministry to more community building, because the people who lost their homes often had to be relocated in different neighborhoods in town. And now the residents in these areas of town had to build a new community with old and the new residents. But in a small, tight-knit community like ours, it's a pretty rural town, and those people had lived in their family homes for generations prior to that. And it wasn't that easy for those people to mingle with people from different neighborhoods and start fresh in a new community. And by hosting events that were only for the new residents who relocated after they lost their homes in the tsunami, although it was necessary in the first few years to meet their unique needs for grief care, after 9, 10 years or so, it felt like it was sort of almost like dividing or isolating those newer residents from the rest of the community. So for the past 2 years or so, we started to extend our invitation to everyone in the community, in the neighborhood, rather than just those who lost their homes and relocated, in hopes of helping the community building aspect of survivor care. And we also changed up the program from just having tea and chatting together to introducing some light exercise in addition to chatting, because another big need we saw, especially since COVID started, was just the lack of exercise and just the opportunity to go out and mingle with people in general. So Fuma-net is the name of the exercise we decided to incorporate to those programs, and it's been done by our fellow Christian workers in the coastal towns for a long, long time, and they found it to be a very effective way to meet the needs of the elderly population and connect with them, and also connect them with each other, because our town, just like all the other towns in this part of Japan, has an aging population with low birth rates. Japan as a whole has a serious problem with population decline, but it's much more extreme in these rural towns like ours. So we basically have lots of old people and not enough young people to support them. So we felt like it was very important for our church to respond to the needs of our community. And since most people who attended our community events were elderly, we thought it would be really good to help them to be able to live a healthy, independent life in our community. So going back to Fuma-net, Fuma-net is an exercise designed to improve both cognitive and walking abilities for the elderly. So we put down a rubber grid on the floor, and you step through these squares without stepping on the frames. And there are many different steps, and we usually do 3 or 4 different ones in a session. And by repeating the step through the whole length of the net or the grid, you need concentration, attention, and memory. And by stepping over the frames and walking kind of slowly through the net, you're teaching your body to lift your foot adequately and control your body weight and pay attention to how it needs to be shifted from one foot to the other in order to be able to walk without tripping and falling. When you get older, you're more prone to tripping over the smallest thing because you're not lifting your foot high enough. And because their bodies are more fragile, you tend to get more serious injuries from these falls, which oftentimes cause the person to lose the physical independence. And being able to walk by yourself is one of the most basic things you need to be able to do to stay active, and keep a healthy lifestyle as an elderly person. So we find this kind of exercise to be extremely effective and useful. And currently, we only have resources to do it once a month at each location. But we would like to offer it more frequently for optimal results, and also to be able to host it at our church building as well, because currently we only do it at public buildings like community centers and whatnot, and we're not allowed to speak freely about religious matters. So by also hosting at our church building, we can then incorporate talking about the Bible and sharing the gospel, because at the end of the day, that's what's even more important than their physical health, right? So we're hoping to get more help with this ministry in the future.